Hi, fifth graders. We're ready for a new text set this week, and it's called Achieving a Dream. A dream is something that you really want to do and that you have a goal set and that you're looking forward to. Don't confuse dream and wish. Like, I wish I was a millionaire, but I'm not, and I'm not really achieving that. So that's just a wish. That's just kind of like an out there wish. A dream is something that you work towards. So that's what we're going to look at this week. The book is called Silent Star. It's the story of deaf major leaguer William Hoy. And you can tell by looking at the cover here that it's going to be about baseball. June 19th, 1889. I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to say that right away you should begin to know this was a long time ago. You can look at the pictures and you can kind of tell that it's old. If it was 1889, that means there was 11 years left until the 1900s. There's 100 years in the 1900s, so that's 111 years. Plus we're in year 2020, so this was like 130 years ago. From his center field position, Washington Nationals star William Hoy eyed the opposing team's base runner stretch his lead off second base, eager to score. Hoy had already thrown out 2 runners at home plate earlier in the game. Would this base runner also challenge Hoy's arm? Hoy peered in at the pitcher's mound. The Nationals pitcher was exhausted. His fastball had lost its zip, and Hoy knew it. With his pitcher tiring and a left-handed batter at the plate, Hoy decided to move closer to the right field. So we know that we assume that this is a picture of Hoy. He played out there in center field and he moved closer to the field because he knows his pitcher's tired. I would say probably because it's been a long game. The pitcher released the ball. The batter swung and blasted a scorching single towards Hoy. The base runner was off with the crack of the bat. Hoy, realizing there was going to be a play at home plate, charged the hard hit ball. He snagged it cleanly on the second bounce and came up firing, which means he threw that thing fast. The ball shot out of Hoy's hand like a cannonball. That's a simile, comparing how fast that ball shot out of his hand. And it whistled its way to the catcher at home plate. The base runner slid wide of the plate in hopes of avoiding the tag, but the Nationals catcher swept his mitt across the diving runner. "He's out!" shouted the umpire through the cloud of dust. With his game-saving play, Hoy had just made history. He became the first player ever to throw out 3 runners at home plate in one game. The crowd erupted into cheers. Then the fans did something else, something they always did to show their appreciation when Hoy made a great play. They threw confetti up in the air and wildly waved their arms and hats and handkerchiefs. The fans made such a visual commotion because William Hoy was deaf. Williams Ellsworth Hoy was not born deaf. When he was 3 years old, he became very sick. He developed a high fever and chills and was too weak to get out of bed. With each day that William was ill, his family grew more worried. Finally, a doctor came to the Hoy's farm in rural Houcktown, Ohio. He told William's parents that their son had a serious infection called meningitis. The doctors shook his head sadly, and said that there was nothing he could do to help the little boy. William was sick for many more days. Then at last he began to get better. His family was relieved, but soon found out that something had changed. The illness had left William deaf. He could not hear well enough to understand speech. Looking at this picture, we can see that mom's there taking care of him. We can see the doctor telling dad probably that there's nothing else we can do. And think back 130 years ago, diseases were different. The doctors used to come to the house to treat patients, and there's just nothing they could do. So he probably laid there sick for a while, and then we see that something changed. As a young boy in the 1860s, William struggled with his deafness. Because he could not hear, his speaking skills were very limited. He often used a pencil and paper to write down what he wanted to say. Some children teased William or were afraid to play with him because he was deaf and did not use his voice to communicate. Adults could be thoughtless too, looking down on the boy or ignoring him altogether. Friendly and personable, William was confused and his feelings were hurt. Everyone was different in some way. He wondered why people could not accept him as he was. It's a good point to think there. Everybody is different in some way. When William was 10 years old, his parents sent him to the Ohio School for the Deaf in Columbus. William loved the school. For the first time in his life, he felt like he fit in. Nobody stared or pointed at him. Nobody felt sorry for him. William learned to use American Sign Language and to read lips. He enjoyed his classes in reading, writing, and mathematics. His absolute favorite thing, though, was the school baseball team. William had played ball with his brothers back home, but that was nothing like this. The school team had real uniforms, real umpires, real games. Every night, William dreamed of playing Major League Baseball, but making his dream come true was a real long shot. There had been only 2 deaf players, both of them pitchers, in the big leagues. At the time, a pitcher played about once every 4 days. William was an outfielder, a position that was played every day. No deaf everyday position player had ever reached the major leagues. After William graduated from high school in 1879, he wondered what he would do next. Not many jobs were open to deaf people. So William's father convinced him to enter the trade meaning the job or the kind of work that somebody does, the trade that he had learned himself in school, shoemaking. Back in Hopetown, at the age of 18, William went to work in the local shoemaker's shop. There he spent his days fixing and making shoes. Day after day, he sat on a wooden bench, toiling in the back of the store. All the work was done by hand, a slow and tedious process. Even though William would have preferred to be playing baseball, he worked diligently. He took pride in everything he did. So we're starting to learn a little bit about William Hoy. He's a go-getter. He's got stamina. He's got persistence. He wants something and he's dreaming and doing it. Soon, William had saved enough money to buy the shoemaker's shop. When the sale was completed, one of the first things that William did was build a baseball diamond on the weedy plot of land out back. Then he invited the local teenagers to play ball there. For most of the year, work kept William so busy that he had no time for baseball. But during the summer, when many townspeople went barefoot, the shoe business was slow. Sometimes William would temporarily close the shop and join the backyard games. I kind of find that page funny, and I think about, yep, in the summertime, the people would go barefoot so they didn't wear out their shoes as much, so he didn't have a lot of work to do. Again, this is so different than our life today because we don't take our shoes to a shoemaker. We just go buy a new pair. But back in that time frame, in that day, they would take, if their leather boots or their leather shoes kind of started to come apart, they would take them to a shoe store, a shoemaker. They would fix them. They would sew them back together. People didn't have the kind of money to just go buy new stuff all the time. So when it was summertime and everybody was going barefoot, William didn't have as much work to do. So sometimes he'd slip outside and play baseball. One June day in 1885, a coach for an amateur, which means not the major leagues, a smaller, an amateur baseball team passed through Hopetown. Always looking for new players, he stopped to watch the game behind the shoemaker's shop. The coach marveled at William's baseball skills. After the game, the coach approached, hoping to talk to this impressive player. Oh, hoping to talk. And we know that William's not going to talk because a lot of deaf people don't talk. They never hear the sound, so they don't talk. So he tapped William on the back and asked if he would like to play baseball for an amateur team. William turned around. He had no idea what the coach had just said. To show the man that he was deaf, William began speaking in sign language. Unnerved by the rapid hand movement, the coach abruptly took off, leaving William bewildered. Unnerved meant it made him nervous. Like he was like, I don't know what this guy's doing. So he left. The coach abruptly took off, leaving William like, what just happened? The next day, however, the coach returned. Once again, William dazzled him, and once again the coach approached after the game. This time the coach came prepared. He reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out a pencil and a notepad, and wrote out an offer for William Hoy to play on his team. Delighted, Hoy nodded and shook the coach's hand. For the rest of the summer, Hoy traveled the towns and cities around Ohio playing games with his new team. A year later, Hoy tried out for the Oshkosh Club, a minor league baseball team. Most folks were sure that Hoy would get cut. A deaf player at the amateur level was one thing, but they doubted that he could ever make it playing with the pros. Oh, people just don't know, do they? Hoy proved them wrong. He played so well, he was offered a spot on the Oshkosh team. Leaving the shoe business behind, he closed his shop for good and he joined the minor leagues. Minor league baseball was full of professional players who would do anything to gain an advantage. Because he could not hear the home plate umpires shouting balls and strikes when he was at bat, Hoy had to turn around to look at the ump after each pitch. The umpire would repeat the call, and as Hoy read the umpire's lips, opposing pitchers often would quickly pitch. Oh, that's nasty. They would often quickly pitch the ball at Hoy, throwing the next ball before he was ready to bat. As a result, Hoy's hitting suffered, and he struggled at the plate. He finished the season with a dismal, which means a low, yucky, .219 batting average. Oh, look at that, a decimal. Amazing. So what they're saying is that he didn't know if he got a ball or a strike. So if this is Hoy, he would turn around to look at the umpire to see if it was a ball or a strike. And while he wasn't ready, the pitcher would pitch another ball, and then he would end up getting out. So he never was very good at batting at this point. But Hoy did not give up on his dream. Between seasons, he came up with a plan that allowed him to follow the home plate's umpire's call. When he returned to Oshkosh for the 1887 season, Hoy was ready. His plan was simple. After each pitch, he would glance down left field line at his team's third base coach. The coach would thrust his left arm into the air to indicate that the ump had called it a ball, and his right arm into the air if he had called it a strike. So Hoy no longer had to turn around, and he was always ready for the next pitch. So when there's a problem, there's a solution. That season, Hoy batted .368. I'm going to back up. He had a .219, and then he's up to a .368. That was one of the best batting averages in minor league baseball. His performance did not go unnoticed. Shortly after the season ended, he received an invitation to try out for the Washington Nationals of the National League. He's climbing right up that ladder. The news that William Hoy had been contacted by the major league team traveled quickly throughout Ohio. Again, most people thought he would fail. They believed big league baseball was no place for a man who could not hear and did not speak. It did not matter to Hoy what people thought. He knew he would succeed. He was determined to prove to everyone that a deaf person could indeed play Major League Baseball. And if he could make it, maybe other deaf players could make it too. Competition in training camp was tough. Hoy had to battle good players from all over the country, but Hoy worked hard. He paid close attention to the other players, and he anticipated all of the possible plays on the bases and in the field. And by the end of camp, Hoy had earned a starting position on the Nationals. Years ago, the word dumb was used to mean not able to speak. We don't do that anymore today, but that was what they did a long time ago. And Hoy's new teammates quickly tagged tagged him with the nickname Dummy. Today, calling a deaf person dumb would be derogatory and offensive. It would be mean. It would be putting them down. But that's what was said years ago, because dumb meant somebody that did not have the ability to talk. So they would, and because deaf people often didn't talk, they would say that they were deaf and dumb. It did not mean they weren't educated and intelligent. It meant that they could not speak. So they called him Dummy. But in Hoy's day, it was always acceptable. Hoy carried his nickname with pride. Dummy became his name that he preferred, and he often corrected people when they called him William. He would say, "Nope, I'm Dummy." Over the next 14 years, Hoy left no doubt in anyone's mind that he was one of baseball's best and smartest players. Season after season, he constantly ranked among major league leaders in assists, putouts, walks, singles, stolen bases, and time on base. Sports writers called him the best fielding outfielder in the National League. In the spring of 1900, another deaf player signed a major league contract. Luther Taylor, a Kansas farm boy, joined the New York Giants as a starting pitcher. Hoy thought it would be an honor to bat against Taylor one day. 2 years later, when Hoy was playing for the Cincinnati Reds, he had that opportunity. On May 16, 1902, Hoy's team hosted Taylor's New York Giants. For the first and only time ever, a deaf batter would face a deaf pitcher in a big league game. Thousands of fans crammed the Cincinnati Reds' beautiful new palace of the Fans Ballpark. With a superb sinker ball, Taylor had quickly established himself as a top-notch pitcher. Hoy knew that Taylor was the opposition while on the playing field, but he also admired the young pitcher. As Hoy approached home plate to bat, he politely greeted Taylor. "I'm glad to see you," Hoy signed. See his fingers? He's signing it since he doesn't talk. Hoy took his stance in the batter's box. Taylor went into his windup and unleashed his trademark sinker. The ball started out high and then dropped sharply into the strike zone. Hoy stood his ground, but did not swing. Strike one! Hoy dug in for the next pitch. Taylor reared back and threw another sinker. This time, Hoy swung and missed. Strike two! Hoy stepped out of the batter's box and wrapped the sides of his cleats. That meant he hit the sides, wrapped them with his bat. Stepping back to the plate, he moved to the front of the box. Taylor wound up and fired a pitch, headed for the lower outside corner of the plate. Hoy was ready. He pounded a ground ball that scooted past the shortstop and into center field for a base hit. As Hoy stood on first base, he exhaled. Then he looked at Taylor. The young pitcher gave Hoy a slight tip of the hat. Hoy tipped his hat too and smiled. The New York Giants won the game that day. The Cincinnati Reds did not like to lose, but Hoy could not help but feel proud. Two deaf players had squared off against each other in a major league game. It was a historical day for baseball. A year later, in 1903, Hoy retired from professional baseball. He bought a 60-acre farm near Cincinnati where he and his wife, Anna, who was also deaf, raised their 3 children. Hoy proved to be as skillful at farming as he was at playing baseball. He operated a successful dairy business for more than 20 years. In 1924, Hoy sold the farm and became a personal director for several hundred deaf employees at the Goodyear Rubber Company in Akron, Ohio. He was coached and umpired in deaf baseball leagues. Hoy remained connected to professional baseball too. Because of his contributions to the sport, he was awarded a lifetime pass to Major League Baseball events. He attended games right up until his death at age 99. William Dummy Hoy was an inspiration to all who met him. Never giving up on his dream, he overcame numerous obstacles to become the first deaf player to have a long and distinguished career in the major leagues. He was courageous and a determined hero. And here's a page that just gives you some more information about William Hoy, and then the end of the book.